All right, everybody, welcome to BO Boys for Monday, February 26th. Fuck it, it's a raw feed. We're doing it live. I'm Clayton.
Yeah, I'm Pat. Clayton, we got a weekend to go over here, but we've also got one of the biggest stories in Hollywood is the collapse of the Sony Spiderverse, the superhero movies in decline. So we had to bring in the big guns. We had to bring in our cape expert. We had to bring in from the direct, from the revived podcast Cinema Spending. He's here, David Thompson. Welcome back to the BO Boys.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, it's gonna be fun diving into the Sony Spider-Man universe, which is its second iteration of a title, by the way, which they never use in marketing, but they just call it the Spider-Man universe, which is another kind of ploy to try to get people into butts in seats. Really funny, Pat. You call me the cape expert or something like that because I have been currently obsessing over what the Superman legacy Superman suit is going to look like come 2025, July 11th, 2025. And I am just deep in the rabbit hole, deep in the theories. There is a logo that just recently dropped, a leaked symbol of what it might look like. And gosh, I just cannot wait for that film.
Do you think there's any chance, because these superhero movies are in such decline, that James Gunn goes with an all Clark Kent Superman movie? No Superman. He's just like, people don't like these superheroes anymore, but let's give him just 2 hours of Clark Kent. Is
Well,
there
so
any possibility?
not even Smallville, where he wasn't in the suit and he would do super stuff. He's just a reporter.
He's just a reporter. He's
It's
just
him
a
and Lois.
reporter. Yeah. Yeah, he's just a reporter trying to get a gig at one of these collapsing digital media outlets. Is there any chance that's James Gunn's Superman movie?
No, well, I will say the movie has cast several other superheroes in it, so
Okay.
maybe there is something there. Maybe Clark is covering all those other heroes, and his Superman gig is on the back burner for now. I'm not sure, and they haven't started filming yet, so there's always time to tweak the script and do
Mm-hmm.
something different because we'll see. Maybe a big changes will happen if Deadpool 3 somehow doesn't perform great like everyone's expecting. That's really the big one, obviously this year, but in my opinion, in general, where like I know a little tongue in cheek there with the Clark Kent thing, I
Mm-hmm.
do think Deadpool 3, if it's not the great success that we're all expecting it to be, or some of us are expecting it to be, there might be some moving and some shaking at WB, at Disney, at Sony, I guess.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. So much riding on Deadpool's quips and meta humor this summer. It's going to be fascinating to watch. So we're going to get into all that. We're going to get into this Madam Web stuff. But Clayton, could you start us off with a plow for the box office weekend of Friday, February 23rd?
Yes, number one again. Bob Marley, One Love, made $13.5 million, down 53%. It added 58 theaters. It's at $71.1 million in its second weekend of release. The new Demon Slayer movie from Crunchyroll made $11.5 million in only 1,949 theaters. It's at 11.5 in its first weekend. Number three, Ordinary Angels, Lionsgate. It says it's Lionsgate, but we know it's Angel Studios.
Mhm.
$6.5 million in its first weekend of release. Here we go. Number four, Madam Web made $6 million, down 61%. No theater change. It's at $35.4 million in its second weekend. And number five, Migration, made $3 million, down 22%. It lost 21 theaters. It's at $120.4 million in its 10th weekend of release. Now, I'm not going to go top 10 because I don't think we need to because we have a lot to talk about with David. But we do have to mention down here at number 8, Driveaway Dolls. $2.4 million in its first weekend release. That is less than Lisa Frankenstein.
Wow, that's stunning.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's stunning. I mean, let's start with that then. Drive Away Dolls. Uh, David, what do you think happened here? This is half a Cohen movie. It's Ethan Cohen making a movie that was a script that was in his drawer from the late 90s. I mean, we talked about on the last episode briefly, me and Clayton, that this felt like such a faux Coen Brothers like ripoff from the 90s movie. Unless we haven't seen it, but just in terms of the advertising. And it's pretty clear by that 2.4, people did not want it. People have, I guess, left the 90s finally. I mean, what do you think happened for this to go as low as it did?
Yeah, it was a surprising number when I saw that. I actually considered going to see it this weekend. I didn't. So maybe that had something to do with it.
We're
But
part of
it
the
was I had to Google the trailer. I only saw the trailer once in a movie theater. I never saw it online, on TV, on like a Twitter or TikTok or Instagram, which now gets bombarded with ads and specifically movie trailers. Like, I mean, I specifically was bombarded with Madam Web marketing, specifically Sydney Sweeney, which I want to dive into when we talk about that with anyone but you, Madam Web. It's just, it is a Sydney Sweeney mess, but also a beautiful mess. So with this film, there was no marketing for it. I don't think many people knew who was in it, what it was about, and if it was even coming out in theaters. And really that shows with this performance. But even then, even with that lack of marketing, that's still a really, really rough number.
Well, and they even held it past the strike to promote, so the actors could promote. And did you see these actors anywhere?
No.
Nobody ate the wings.
Exactly.
They probably asked to eat the wings. They said, we will do 5 rounds. We will eat these wings in the other end in order to get on your show. And Hot Ones probably said no.
Oh, wow. You think Hot Ones turned down Beanie Feldstein? That's what you're saying.
And nothing against Beanie Feldstein, somebody who's I liked a lot of their work. But I think there was just, hey, you know, we've got John Oliver lined up, or who I don't even know who the last Hot Ones guest was. I think it was somebody.
Hulk Hogan's coming on. Or
Hulk Hogan's
Quinta
coming
Brunson
on.
was just on there. Yeah.
Quinta Brunson. So here's the thing. Quinta Brunson, great SNL host and big TV star. But this is a movie. And the fact that you had a TV star eating the wings when there were movie people who could have ate the wings, that shows you how little interest there was in this movie.
I mean, I think to David's point, I don't think Focus Features put those calls together. Like, I think Focus Features here was like, eat the wings for something else, for a different project we'll work on together. It really feels like this is a movie they put out in theaters just so that more people will be aware of it when it plays on Peacock in 3 weeks. It just feels like they totally punted on this. They didn't know how to sell it, and it does have that late 90s, early 2000s feel that I don't know if people are too interested in right now. Wacky Cohen's Road comedy, violence stuff. I think it's just a tone that's not in vibe anymore.
But you mentioned,
and I'm looking forward to seeing this. I want to see it.
You're talking about it as if it seems like a Coen Brothers movie at all. I mean, it does seem more like you were saying last episode, those knockoff Tarantino movies. I mean, this looks like Excess Baggage. This looks like that level.
Like Excess Baggage, yeah.
Right? Alyssa Silverstone, Benicio del Toro, of course, the 1997 film. That sort of quality of movie.
Yes.
Not the Coen. I mean, nothing the Coens have done has looked this poor ever.
Yeah, it looks like. Do you remember? And you're younger than us, David, but Clayton, we're Gen X, so this would be for us.
Well, I'm Gen X, so I'll definitely get this.
Overnight Delivery. Reese Witherspoon, Paul Rudd. It looks like that type of movie. 1998, prime, us as teen Gen Xers going to see stuff.
You're a little young, probably couldn't see it, too young.
It's that type of movie. People weren't interested in it, and it did less than Lisa Frankenstein. Demon Slayer. There was a new Demon Slayer movie this weekend, and it did better than Clayton, me and you were given credit for in the weekend update. I mean, it did 11.5 million this weekend. David, where are you on the whole anime beat? I know you're our Cape guy, you're the superhero expert. What does this opening weekend say about the current health of these anime films?
Oh, I love anime in theaters. I think it's awesome. I think that there has been a calling for it for many people. A desire for these films, quote unquote, to be in theaters because really I'm a Demon Slayer fan. I haven't seen the film yet. I probably will, but the reason why maybe I wouldn't, but I actually really want to, and why some other people, like other fans, really want to, besides seeing it on the big screen, is that this is the first look into the next arc and the next season. So really all of these movies are episodes from each season kind of crossing over and creating a bridge movie from season, in this case, 3 to 4. And in anime, well, at least with Demon Slayer, it's each arc, like each kind of chapter of the story. So we're leading into now the 4th chapter. So it's actually a really cool thing, in my opinion. I'm not surprised by the numbers. I know a lot of people that are very interested, not only in anime, but going to check out these films actually on the big screen, on like an IMAX screen, for instance. I saw it was when they did the Mugen Train film a couple of years ago. It was in 2021. Right. That was I think a pretty good success.
Yeah,
and
it almost beat
awesome.
the opening of Mortal Kombat that weekend. The classic weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like a lot of fun. But that I believe was the first Demon Slayer anime to come to US theaters specifically. And obviously because of that, now we've had a couple more. But I think this is going to be a very relevant and continual thing in the US for animes to get these big releases, especially Demon Slayer is very popular anime right now. It's a very hot anime. The manga was only finished in like 2020, so it's very new, very fresh, and a lot of people are interested in it.
Now that echoes something that we got from Wannabe Boy Marcus. He is our anime expert, and he gives us boots on the ground. And he was saying the same thing, that the reason this movie didn't open as big as, say, the Demon Slayer that opened Mugen Train that opened in April 2021 for $21 million. That was an original full-length animation, and this is a compilation, right? So that's why these are not doing as well. But $11 million for a compilation of episodes is great. And his take on this is the reason why we're seeing these releases not doing as well as the some of the Dragon Ball ones and this Demon Slayer is because the IPs that are really sort of big in the US are very limited. So you're getting these big names that are opening really big until these other IPs sort of cross over into the general population. You're not going to get necessarily huge anime openings. You know what I mean? And so he mentioned Chainsaw Man. Are you familiar with Chainsaw Man?
I'm familiar with it. I've never seen it, but I know what it is.
Yeah, so it's being produced, no release date, but he's saying this is the best hope coming for something to open to over 20 million.
Interesting.
Coming soon. So it's the thing is like this is a beginning stage. I mean, I've touted adult animation as the future, right? I said the way forward with Harry Potter is adult animation. I still believe that, even though they're trying to get a show together on WB. WB, I mean, Max or whatever.
Right.
I think that's the wave of the future. Young people are raised on adult animation, and not adult animation in the sense of like Andy Samberg wants a paycheck, so he's going to voice a comedy on Fox. That's the bad adult animation. I'm talking about animation for adults in the sense of anime.
Fritz the Cat, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Fritz the Cat, I mean, that used to be adult anime. I have my VHS copy that I inherited from my dad, like we all did, rite of passage.
Right. So, I mean, listen, the next time Demon Slayer opens a proper, completely new film, that's not TV compilations, hey, maybe that opens to 25, 26, The fact that these TV episodes could do $11-12 million.
Yeah, I think also if they were like, that was in a way, there was a lot of hype leading into that one as well, where that followed the first season, I believe. Yeah, it did. It followed the first season. So it was very fresh, very hot. Now we're kind of, in the midst of it. What if they were to do this with like the finale, the final couple of chapters, the final, like say they basically do the final season, say it's season like 5 or 6, I think is the rumor, based on the manga, because they basically do it like 1 for 1. It's really cool if you're really into the art and the style and the story. But imagine they, are releasing that final season, week by week, and then suddenly they're like, hey, the last 6 episodes are going to be a film, and you have to go to a theater to see it. That, I think, could kill it. If they go that direction, history says they won't, but I think that would be so cool, and I know I would be there.
Mm-hmm. So let's move from anime and let's move to Jesus and talk about Ordinary Angels. Although no Jesus in the title means a much smaller opening weekend than we had a year ago for the Jesus Revolution. So Ordinary Angels, the new Lionsgate religious film, and it opened up number 3, did 6.5 million. I guess on the low end of some of these religious dramas that we get. So how come Hilary Swank just couldn't bring in the big bucks? She couldn't get to double digits. Also, the lead actor from the Reacher series, Alan Ritchson, this was his, first big cash in after sort of making it big on that TV show.
He was in Fast X, my friend.
He was in Fast X, but more as a setup to what he's going to do in Fast X I would say.
Okay.
But listen, he's the main guy in this. He's first billed in this movie. So I would have thought he would have meant more. I would have thought Reacher would have had
Pat,
a little bit.
I was unaware of this.
Okay.
And this is my job to know these things. So
Why
then would general public know that Jack Reacher is in this film?
But it doesn't matter if you know. It matters if the people in the pews know. And I would assume they knew. I would assume that the people in the pews, the people who ride the church buses from the church to the theater knew, and they didn't seem to care as much as you would maybe have thought.
I wonder if with the pews, I wonder if those people that go out to all these religious movies, I wonder if they really care who's in it. I'm not sure if I'm not sure stars really sell so much, because really I think a problem with this movie is that it is competing up against what has been a really cool movement with the Chosen releases, which is totally kind of an original idea. And that is getting that audience 1000%. I know for a fact. And that's been this sliced up thing. You're getting episodes in theaters and everyone's getting really excited about that. And it's being promoted at churches across the entire United States. So I don't think they had the same energy for Ordinary Angels. And I question their decision making for this release date. Why not? I don't know what's releasing around Easter. This seemed like an Easter win for me. Put it somewhere around Easter. Maybe there is something else faith-based that's around Easter, but this seems like a really bad time to release this movie, especially with The Chosen still playing in theaters and people, the same audience wanting to go see that. And I believe it's the culmination. It's the end of the theatrical run. The current episodes that are in theaters are for that, which maybe pulled more people away. Generally, I think this will end up being a streaming success. Wherever it ends up on streaming, it'll definitely do dynamite over there.
Yeah, that is a great point, is that the amount of things that the preacher could mention at the end of the sermon is limited, because you got to give thanks, you've got to give praise, you've got to, say we feel bad for the people who died last week, whatever. And then you could maybe only mention one movie that you want everyone in the pews to know about. And the preachers, maybe they only did mention, hey, and now that we've given praise, given thanks, Chosen season 4 episodes 4 through 6 are in theaters now. All right. And now I got to go. So that might've been what happened. The preachers didn't have enough time to mention Ordinary Angels, now in theaters everywhere.
And I think Angel Studios specifically has them, kind of in their back pocket, quote unquote, where it's like anything that is distributed by Angel Studios now is seen by the community as, hey, let's go support this. I'm completely blanking on the what was it? Sound of Freedom over the summer. In the post Sound of Freedom world, Angel Studios, I think, can do no wrong. And from a film, a film studio perspective, great for them, because now they have that kind of cachet, I guess, in the community where it's like, all right, anything they release, we should go support this. Because Angel Studios, I've written about this for the direct a little bit from time to time, just talking about some of their releases. We've written about The Chosen a lot. A lot of readers are very interested. It's so interesting to me, their setup and their situation and how they sell things and how they have their website set up and how this pay it forward method.
Mhm.
You know, you guys went over like the Sound of Freedom kind of controversy, I would suppose, where it's like, are all these theaters being sold out and no one's actually in them? And no one really got to the bottom of that.
Mhm.
And you wonder how much that continues. But if you think about that, the fact that there could have been all these theaters sold out from just random people just donating money, I feel like they have carved out that studio so much of that community. And if it's not from Angel Studios, there could even be some that question it. And like you said, don't mention it at the end of the sermon.
Right. Yeah, it's Angel Studios is 2010's Marvel MCU. And
Well,
all
I
these
would
other
s-
competitors are the Sony, we'll get into it, are the Sony Spiderverse.
I think it's more like they're the church bus A24. It feels like Angel Studios. That's
Okay.
what I feel like.
Yeah.
And they
Okay.
have a movie called Cabrini coming
Yes.
out March 8th, I believe. So not super close to Easter. But Pat St. Francis Cabrini, he is a
Mhm.
fellow Italiano.
Italian. Yeah,
Correct.
he's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
Yeah.
Will you see
Um,
that? Will you see that to represent?
To represent Italians? Maybe. I mean, it's a religious film. It's not a gangster flick.
Well, he deals with criminals.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, how could he not? Because I mean, you're allowed to speak on this, not me. Actually, I
Yes.
shouldn't
We
go any
we
further.
yeah, we all at some point or another have to put someone in a trunk.
Mhm.
It's just a rite of passage. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point though about Angel Studios right now has the street cred. Maybe you're right, Clayton. Maybe it's more of an A24 thing. They sell the merch and Ordinary Angels. Hilary Swank, she's got 2 Oscars. Great to have her in your movie, but she's not going to do like Jim Caviezel and after the movie hold up a QR code. 2 Oscars. She forgot to thank her husband both times, sure, but she's got the 2 Oscars and she's not going to do stuff like that. But that's the kind of thing that gets people to buy tickets. You got to hold up the QR code at the end of a movie and say, this is part of your mission is to buy someone else a ticket. And she didn't do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that movie, hey, but listen, it sold $6.5 million worth of tickets. So the theater owners are happy because Driveaway Dolls didn't do that. And Madam Web didn't do that. Ordinary Angels finished ahead of the second weekend of Madam Web. Guys, I think we got to get into this because, this is, I mean, listen, we want David here to talk about everything, but this is his specialty right here. David, you brought back your podcast, The Great Cinema Spending. You recently devoted an entire episode to the Madam Web fiasco, the Sony Spider-Verse fiasco. Give us your take, first of all. Madam Web has bombed. It is officially fully bombed. The second weekend, the drop wasn't Morbius drop, but also it opened so low that you can't even give, any credit that it only dropped 60%. Just talk to us. What happened with Madam Web? Why was this so thoroughly rejected?
Well, there's a few things that tie into this, and I have a lot to say and kind of discuss. On that episode of Cinema Spending, a lot of it was basically talking about Sony and their plan going forward, and it's not adding up. It's not working.
Mm-hmm.
I think in 2018, Venom really set this whole studio, this whole department up for failure because it's really hard to compare a character like Venom, who is a mainstay Spider-Man villain who has a ton of independent individual popularity, and that was shown in theaters. Madam Web, like just taking a step back, the development of Madam Web. Sony's whole strategy is to take an obscure character, basically. Madam Web is very obscure. I am a massive Spider-Man fan. Madam Web is an obscure ass character. Like you have had to have read several Spider-Verse specific comics to know who Madam Web is, why she matters, how she's important. That being said, Sony decided, hey, we're going to use all these spin-off characters, good, bad, anti-hero, whatever, and we're going to, get big names to portray them, and let's see if that sells. Let's see if that works. And Madam Web, of course, didn't work. And fundamentally, I believe if you just take a step back, and I've been thinking about this the last few days, it's just crazy to me. You would never take DC, right?
Mhm.
They had the Joker movie, massive success because Joker has that. I thought it was a really good movie. It was very controversial, divisive, and just interesting,
Right.
and a great performance. And with that being said, but that is a character who is beloved, well known, has that independent fandom to it. Not only does Madam Web not have that, there is zero of that. You would never see DC, for example, or Marvel Studios, but let's take DC for example. You would never see them make a Lex Luthor movie. Now, Lex Luthor is a very, very popular villain, but
Yes.
because they own all of DC, they would never in their wildest dreams make a independent Lex Luthor movie where you don't mention Superman, you just beat bop around the idea of Clark Kent and you meet his mother, and that's it, right? But because Sony only owns the rights to these characters, they're having to release this garbage in theaters. And I say having because apparently that's what they're doing, right? They decided, hey, we're going to play nice with Tom Holland at Disney, but then when we release our own live action stuff, it's going to be straight trash, and there's nothing you can do about it. We're not even going to care. Me and Matt Rimke, my co-host over at the Direct Podcast, when we reviewed I hated the movie. I loathed the movie. I thought it was despicable. As a Spider-Man fan, it is offensive as a fan. It makes my blood boil. So I'm happy I'm happy it's dying, and I hope the whole universe dies. With that being said, Matt's point on the podcast, his main opening remarks on his review were how the studio and the creators clearly didn't care about the movie, and you could tell immediately. There was this ADR, these rough cuts, the editing was just lazy. And it is terrible to think that in a time when an MCU movie, The Marvels, which is not even the best in the bottom half of MCU movies in terms of quality, miles better than Madam Web, bombs, essentially, is the lowest earning Marvel Studios movie ever. And now, for general audiences, we get the double down hammer of the worst comic book movie I've ever seen. And it is such a shame because Sony should be trying to generate hype and build the value of these characters and of Spider-Man, because let's get one thing clear. In my opinion, these spin-off films are officially Morbius, Madam Web, even Venom. They are lessening the value of their IP and lessening the value of owning Spider-Man, which this should be doing the opposite of that. In 2018, it was, and that was the mistake. The mistake was seeing Venom and being like, oh, we can do this with everyone. We can do this with everything. Let's dig through the comics, find some characters, and let's do it. Kraven's going to suck. Venom 3 is going to suck. And I hope the Sony Spider-Man universe dies by the end of 2024.
Wow. That was powerful stuff. We talked about preachers earlier. There's a preacher right there. Give this man an auditorium and just let him go off.
Yeah, talk about fire and brimstone. My goodness.
Wow.
I mean,
incredible. So much to unpack there.
I love that I'm not the person saying this. I love that this is coming from a true fan, because
expert. Yeah.
You know this. I'm not a fan of superhero movies, and sometimes I do let my bias get in the way of, of my opinions, and that's wrong. But when you have our Cape expert going off and saying that this Spider-Man universe needs to die.
Yeah.
That is damning stuff. And that is something that Sony should be listening to, because I think you speak for the real fans. You speak for the moviegoers. You speak for the people who plunk down their hard-earned money to buy tickets to these films.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and I really wanted this movie to be good. Like that's the thing. Like you said, Clayton, like you go in, you have that bias kind of a little bit going in, or just in general discussing these topics. I was on the opposite end. Like 6 months ago, I saw the trailer and I was trying to buy into it. I was trying to generate hype myself, being like, this is going to be a good one. Morbius sucked, and Madam Web is worse than Morbius. That's the craziest
Wow.
part. Like Morbius was so bad and so hated, but Madam Web is an even worse movie. So box office wise, of course, it flopped because all the reasons I already discussed. But the quality of the film was also terrible. The word of mouth, weekend 2, we're looking at, it's horrific. Like, I mean, no one wants to see this movie. I don't even think this movie has any real potential on streaming because it's not an enjoyable movie to watch. There's nothing like what's crazy about it. With me being a fan and wanting the movie to be good, like I told people on my Twitter, like after I saw, like, don't go see it. Just don't go see it. I want them, obviously, for your own sake, for your own money, for your own enjoyment. Like it made me mad as a Spider-Man fan. I wanted it to not succeed. And it's just such a shame because there's so many, because I'm the same guy who is going to be so buzzing with excitement for Deadpool 3.
Mm-hmm.
But with Madam Web, it's hurting the brand. Like, I know that. Like, I'm not one of these fans that just like glass is always, half full. I see it for what it is. And not only is Sony kind of killing itself, but you saw Marvel Studios Super Bowl Sunday release Deadpool 3. Valentine's Day, the day Madam Web releases in theaters, it announces its Fantastic Four cast. One of the biggest casting announcements we've been waiting for like half a decade at this point. And the X-Men 97 trailer gets released for Disney Plus. Like Marvel Studios was basically knew how bad Madam Web was and was trying to cover up all of its wrongdoings and just play PR for an entirely different film studio. So it's really a mess. And that goes back to what I said earlier at the beginning of the podcast, where, I mean, I'm looking forward to Superman Legacy. There's 2025 has so much promise at theaters in general, right? Outside of superhero movies, but a lot of superhero movies are releasing in 2025. And it's hard for me to sit here in February 2024 and think those are all going to be surefire hits because many people see in association with Marvel, think that's Marvel, see Madam Web, see a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes for a Marvel movie and think, I skipped the Marvels. Marvel's dead, right? Comic book movies are dead. So it's a long road ahead. It's going to be interesting.
David, you talk about that confusion for fans. They see in association with Marvel Studios with Madam Web, and they think, well, Marvel must be terrible. That happened to supposedly the lead actress in Madam Web, Dakota Johnson. There's a rumor out there that she thought she was signed up for a proper MCU Disney Marvel movie.
Yep.
When in fact she had signed up for the Sony Spiderverse universe. And, she fired her agents when the trailer dropped. And listen, she doesn't get off easy because, I mean, you could tell. I've heard this is a terrible performance. She obviously is very checked out in the promotion of this. But the actors don't know anymore what they're in when they do these Sony movies. And you're going to have that lack of trust. And obviously, money trumps everything. You give them a big paycheck, they'll be in these movies. But it does seem like this is becoming a thing where actors are going to be very hesitant to be in these types of movies anymore because they don't know what they're signing up for. And the quality is so bad and the reputation is becoming so damning.
Yeah, I mean, the rumor is that they backed up the money truck for Pedro Pascal for him to become Mr. Fantastic amongst all of this. And, there was a photo last night at the SAG-AFTRA Awards where it was after Pedro won for Last of Us, and it was an image of him standing up in shock, and there was RDJ clapping in the background looking at him. And us comic book fans were like, this is amazing because it's like kind of a passing of the torch kind of a look, because that's the expectation for a Pedro Pascal joining the MCU, like that he's going to be the new kind of face and leader as Reed Richards. And you're right, because I think with Fantastic Four, like that's a great point with casting, because it seemed to take so long to nail that casting. Like there were so many rumors, so many ideas. Like apparently it was offered to a lot of different. I mean, Adam Driver was involved. Margot Robbie for Sue Storm was previously involved. There was a whole carousel for Human Torch, Johnny Storm. And we're going to see that in the future. Like they have a lot of people locked up already. Marvel's all about continuity and continuation. But for new heroes and new characters, I agree. I'm happy for Timothée Chalamet being in Dune, not being in Marvel, which is crazy for me to say because I love Marvel. But I'm kind of happier for him that he's in Dune because now that gets to be his own sci-fi thing that he kind of owns right now.
I mean, when you talk about Dune 2, I wonder if during the filming of that or right now during the promotional tour, if Timothée Chalamet is helping to console Florence Pugh, who is about to have to go film this Thunderbolts movie, a movie that she clearly is trying to get out of. When asked about it, she said maybe it won't happen. She was basically wish casting into the universe that they would just scrap this movie, and now she has to do it. And I'm sure Chalamet is like, you'll get through it. People could get through a lot. They're relaying stories to her of relatives who've gotten through illnesses. Like that is how now you get these young stars through having to do a superhero movie. And it's a different world than it was a few years ago with these movies.
Can we take a step back real quick and get back to the RDJ topic? Soon to be Oscar winner. I mean, I think after SAG, we're feeling this is in the bag for him. So
sweeping.
It's
crazy.
It's a slam doink. Now, we got an email a few days ago from wannabe boy Ryan. And Ryan, the title is Clarification on Robert Downey Jr. and Marvel. And so I'm going to just summarize this. Sorry, Ryan, but I think it can be summarized in the sense that we have said on this show that RDJ is going around town and talking crap, if you will, on Marvel, saying that he's glad he's out. He got pulled out by Nolan. There seems to be a confusion as to whether he's actually talking shit about Marvel, really. These quotes are out of context. He's also saying it's some of the best work he's ever done at other places. What is your take? Because I'm assuming, being the capes guy, even though he doesn't have a cape, Iron Man was a big character for you, linchpin of the Marvel Universe. RDJ, probably a guy close to your heart because of what he did for superhero movies in general. Do you think he is separating himself from that? Is he making fun of it? What is your take on his Oscar trail where he's been talking about Marvel?
I don't think he's making fun of it. I do think it is interesting, the quotes where he kind of does. He totally thinks that this whole award season, and obviously from his performance in Oppenheimer and him winning all these awards, I genuinely think he thinks it is a makeup call in many ways, because that quote stuck out to me, the second one you mentioned, where he feels like some of his best work was in Marvel, but because of the genre, it was never properly noticed or acclaimed. And I tend to agree, because RDJ, not only was he the linchpin as Iron Man, but every time he popped on screen, he just owns the screen. Like he is the most captivating character, and they've definitely lost that, and you can't just replicate it. There's so many people. There was a recent Hollywood Reporter article with a lot of updates on Marvel, and the Kang Dynasty is no longer called the Kang Dynasty. So Avengers 5 is up in the air and a mess. But what's new? So with that being said, they were also mentioned, like, they're trying to find replacements for RDJ and Chris Evans, and it's not going to happen like that. How this whole thing began, Pedro Pascal, I think, is supposed to be a part of that answer. But with RDJ, I think it's simply put, he's very proud of the work he did over there. I think he's very egotistical about how he was Marvel, and I do think some of that might leak out, where it's like, look at him now.
Right.
Look at him now. And not as necessarily a jab, but more of a trying to boost himself up, trying to boast himself, being like, hey, like, look at Marvel now. Like, I was the man, and he was like, and they used him as that tool. Like 2013 2013, almost 11 years ago now, was his last solo Iron Man movie. And he was placed strategically in all these different spots: Avengers, Captain America, Spider-Man, more Avengers. Like, he was the linchpin to it all. And it was just through cinematic universe-ness, right? It wasn't even through individual movies. And yet, if you saw Captain America Civil War, Spider-Man, Spider-Homecoming to an extent, he's a smaller role, Infinity War, Endgame, RDJ is the one, right? RDJ would be the only one in that group that would necessarily deserve a quote-unquote Oscar, right? Or an award for his acting ability in any of those movies. So I think he deserves his flowers. I'm happy he's going to win the Oscar. And you didn't ask this question, but will he come back?
I think it's gonna. You're right there. You're right there.
I think before I would say no, I think because they had more confidence in their future storytelling. But at this point, I could see them for an Avengers movie trying to get him back in some form or fashion, trying to replicate some of that No Way Home hype and juice, where it's like, we never say he's coming back, but he's coming back, right? And then all of a sudden, the whole theater erupts in 2028 or whenever that movie releases.
But so Ryan in his email said he doesn't think this is going to happen because Marvel is smart enough, Kevin Feige is smart enough to know that Endgame was such a poignant, huge way to let that character go and to celebrate that character and to sacrifice that character in a meaningful way, that he doesn't believe that they'll mess it up and bring him back. My thing is, I disagree with that. And I love that Ryan has that hope and really believes in storytelling, because that's very important. Storytelling is very important to us. But when we're talking money and bottom line, an entire genre on the line, they will give him $1 billion to come back if they think they can get that quick pop. And that's all it's going to be, though, because if you do bring him back in a Marvel movie in any capacity, even if it's a joke in Deadpool, it does lessen even more so the stakes of these movies to such a degree that you can never be emotionally invested ever again, because anybody can come back and nothing matters.
Yeah. No, I agree. I wish I didn't agree. I wish I agree. Ryan.
Yeah.
I wish I agreed. I wish I was with Ryan on this one. But I'm with you at this point. I really am, because you're right. Bottom line, business wise, I think Feige is smart enough, but he's standing on an uneasy and uncertain ground right now. He's not like we're in a world where an Avengers 5 could kind of flop, like that. And that is a crazy thing to say, but it's true. Like, I'm very confident, in terms of the future of the MCU. I am optimistic. I am confident. I think 2024 is an awesome reset year. And then 2025, we keep moving. But the movies have to be good, right? If they keep producing lackluster films, it's going to fizzle out. I mean, there's really no two ways about it. That's just how it goes. So if they do continue to make quality films and you see a clear direction moving forward, then maybe they don't bring him back. Because I do think if they were to ever bring him back, it would be a cameo appearance. It would not be in some like massive way. Like I said, it would be like Garfield McGuire coming back for No Way Home, where he plays a part, but he's not in any of the marketing, and it's it's one of those massive surprises. But if I'm being honest, though, like, look out with Deadpool 3 and Avengers movies moving forward. Their big cameos seem like they're going to all be possibly the Spider-Man coming back, and also just the Hugh Jackmans of the world, the Fox universe, the X-Men, those old X-Men. They're the ones they're going to try to reel back in and use the nostalgia bait to get butts in seats.
Right. Ben Affleck is Daredevil.
Daredevil, yeah. No, Jennifer Gardner as Elektra is apparently in Deadpool 3.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, listen, I Deadpool 3 has so much riding on it. And just, before we're going to get to Anyone But You, because for the listeners, we're finally divvying up the millions. We'll be doing that in a minute. But I just want to get back to the Spider-Verse predictions that you had, because I thought those were some bombs that you dropped on us, that you think Kraven the Hunter is going to bomb. Obviously, that's going to bomb. But you also think that Venom 3 is going to bomb this year. Can you talk about that? Because the first two, I mean, the first one was a gigantic sensation. The second one came out fall of 21, still people not quite going back to theaters, and that opened to 90 million in COVID times. Why do you think Venom 3, because Tom Hardy is still playing Venom, right? They haven't passed it off to anyone. Is it just that the Madam Web Morbius stink is so vile that it's going to affect Venom 3?
It's definitely a possibility. I did say I thought Venom 3 would suck, which was kind of more of an objective. I think it's going to be a bad movie.
Yeah.
But
got it.
Box office wise, I could still do. That's going to be the biggest success for sure, because there is love for that franchise. I mean, Let There Be Carnage still did pretty good considering when it was released and that whole climate. Obviously, it was the lead up to No Way Home that helped a little bit with that. But that was a worse movie than the first one. So the whole trajectory is just on the downward slope. Craven is an X Factor. It's an R-rated movie. So that's a kind of a blind side, a left turn, which is making it this year very fascinating. Deadpool 3, Craven, Joker, all R-rated comic book movies hitting theaters. So that would be a very interesting kind of tell as to what people are interested in. Venom 3 could even go that far if they wanted to. They probably won't, though, because of that kind of more general, broader audience. Venom 3, by all accounts, is going to be the last Venom movie. Okay. So in a way, unless it makes more than the first one, and they demand a fourth one is made, and they, like you said, that they bring the money to Tom Hardy's house, that's going to be the end. So kind of my point was with that, to clarify, is I think the movies are going to suck. I think Venom 3 is going to make more than Let There Be Carnage, but it'll be in that neighborhood. Okay. And it might even make less. I think it'll be in that neighborhood, though. I think it will be somewhat of a success. And I think the problem is, if Venom 3 is actually the final Venom movie, what are you left with? Right? You're not making Morbius 2. You're not making Madam Web 2. And you're probably not making The Kraven the Hunter 2. And that would be the end. And I think, in a way, if Venom 1 brought this shitty universe into the earth and Venom 3 left us, that's fine with everyone.
Can I ask you, because we're going to talk a lot of Sydney Sweeney in a minute. We're going to divvy up the millions for anyone but you.
Yes.
Sydney Sweeney in Madam Web, she plays a character that someday, at the pace this movie went, 3 movies later, she'll eventually be Spider-Girl, right? Is that am I correct? She is the future Spider-Girl. Why didn't Sony just make a Spider-Girl movie titled Spider-Girl? Doesn't that seem more commercial than Madam Web, which I'm not a comic book guy, but what I've heard is Madam Web is an old lady, a blind old lady in a wheelchair. Is that the comic book incarnation of her? Why did they choose Madam Web and not just Sydney Sweeney in the spandex as Spider-Girl?
It's truly baffling. I don't have a clear answer. I don't know why. I could see why they wouldn't want to make a Spider-Girl movie. But I don't know why they tried to make a Madam Web movie then into a Spider-Girl movie, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the thing where in the film, it's not actually a Spider-Girl movie. There's several Spider-Girls or Spider-Women, but they're girls. They're teenagers in the film. And they're projected to basically be these heroes. So it's really odd. I mean, the story itself is really odd. And I think what they saw was, here we go. I mean, this is the thing. It is another example, what I'm about to say, of being too reactionary to what's hot. What is Madam Web? She's very multiversal. She has a lot to do with the multiverse, right? And I think in the initial drafts, the movie ends up not being multiversal at all. Nothing to do with the multiverse. Because Madam Web, in many ways, I mean, she kind of take the name for what it is. She kind of she has these she's wheelchair, blind. So what are her abilities? All psychedelic and kind of she can kind of communicate with other spider people in different universes. None of that in the movie, but I think in early drafts that was part of it, and there was a connection to Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield, and there was something there because in Morbius there is a post-credit scene that has the multiverse involved from No Way Home, and we get Michael Keaton, and it's terrible and it makes no sense. But I do think with Madam Web, in like the origins of it, they thought, hey, this could be a clever idea. What is weird though, Pat, is that they avoid so much saying terms like Spider-Man, Spider-Girl, Spider-Woman, and it's baffling to me. It's truly baffling. It's like when the MCU had Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and they couldn't say mutant.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't own the rights to mutant. Sony owns the rights to everything. Like, why are they not saying, like, because the villain, Ezekiel Sims, I mean, I think it's Sydney Sweeney's character actually, looks at him like climbing on the wall, and she's like, he looks like a spider person. And it's like, he looks like a Spider-Man, but you're not going to say that because he's not Spider-Man. It's just, it's baffling is what it is.
I think that's a reference to our show, I think, because we do the person thing. I think that's what that was. There would be, oh boy, listeners. Now, I feel like, and I don't know if this was still the plan, David, correct me if I'm wrong, because when they did the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movies, those were supposed to all kind of not culminate, but it was going to be a Sinister Six movie. Yeah. And I think that was the plan with this, again, was have everybody do their independent movie. You bring in Vulture from the other universe, Michael Keaton, great man, Pittsburgher, Yinzer, and he would join this Sinister Six, and that would be the end game. So after Venom 3 and after Morbius and after Madam Web and after you had Kraven, you would have the Sinister Six movie with all these actors in it. It would be the anti-Avengers. It'd be the villain Avengers. And then you get Spider-Man to fight them. Yeah. That was the end game here. And that cannot happen at this point, right?
No, I don't see that happening at this point. The one I would say caveat is that we really don't know what's happening with Spider-Man 4 with Tom Holland. And until that's confirmed, all bets are off, because in 2019, Sony and Disney weren't playing well again, and Tom Holland was heading back to Sony, and it was a disaster. Obviously, it got reversed. We got No Way Home. It was awesome. Box office success is going to be studied for decades. Really unbelievable for the times that it was at. With that being said, if they aren't, rumor is, by the way, they're not getting along right now. That their vision for Spider-Man 4 is off, which is not surprising based on their recent decisions, and we wonder who the fans would choose, right? I think we'd all would choose Feige's idea. But with that being said, that's been their problem, right? When it was the Avengers, they were trying to make their own with Andrew Garfield. When it's multiverse, we have now Madam Web and the Morbius post-credit scene. They have no individual creative ability. Like, I honestly think the first Venom, that was its own thing. Like, that was just trying to be a spin-off Venom movie, and they did what they could. It wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't one of those things. Like, people liked it. Venom fans enjoyed it. Venom looked pretty good, and he was vicious too. He wasn't like Spider-Man 3, Venom. So I just think Sony has no real creative vision, and because of that, because of how reactionary they are, it's just coming back to bite them in the ass at the end of the day. And I think this might be the end of it. I don't know what they do. I doubt they ever sell the rights, but I do think in a way at the end of 2024, if things keep going south, that could be a discussion just because of the lessened brand. I do think the brand is officially lessened. The only giant caveat to all of this, once again, is the Spider-Verse movies, the Sony Pictures animation. Totally different story. Those are incredible movies by incredibly creative people that know and love and care about the characters and care about the lore. And that's multiversal too. It's baffling to see how well those animated movies are doing and just how poorly ideated and just executed the live action films are.
And, you talked about the stink of Madam Web, and we've talked about that a lot. Spider-Verse 2 is up for an Oscar in a few weeks for Best Animated Film.
Picture, yeah.
Could Madam Web be the Norbit to that movie. You know, Norbit famously was the movie that tanked Eddie Murphy's chance to win an Oscar for Dreamgirls because people just couldn't stomach giving an Oscar to the guy who's currently in Norbit. Do you think
so
Oscar
funny.
voters right now are thinking, how do we give the Sony Spiderverse an Oscar when right now they've got Madam Web out there? I think that's a factor. If you're a voter, Madam Web is the Norbit of this year. So we'll see if that happens. I think if that movie doesn't win Best Picture, Best Animated Picture, it's on Madam Web.
Totally possible. I think it might win. I'd be stoked if it won. I think The Boy and the Heron has the next best odds, and I wouldn't be surprising if that won either. So we'll see. But I will happily blame Madam Web for all of my issues. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good out for everyone right now. You know, you go to a
absolutely.
therapist's office and they're trying to figure out your psyche, and you just say, you know what, I did it because of Madam Web. That's why I'm acting this way. That's why my marriage is falling apart, so on and so forth.